The following program does not necessarily reflect the opinions and viewpoints of the staff and management of the station.
Welcome to the wonderful world of seniors, the best of all worlds. You now have the time, resources, and ability to enjoy what you have worked for all your life. So let's explore the many possibilities available to seniors on Senior World Radio. Senior World Radio is your source for senior citizens-related topics, information, and entertainment. Now, here is your host of Senior World Radio, Glenn Howard.
Welcome to the wonderful world of seniors. Seniors today are living longer, have better health, greater resources, more opportunities than any generation in history. It's a great time to be a senior. Like we always say, seniors are young at heart and twice as smart. Today I want to share with you some of the new ideas we have for this show and the direction we plan to follow in the future. We want to tell you the stories about people who have had interesting experiences, people who have lived unusual lives. We call them incredible seniors. Over the last few years, we did our radio show here and doing a lot of talking to people who were influential people who were in positions of power and importance, trying to find people who had something to tell us that society considered to be very important. But we discovered that the greatest stories was really when we were going out and doing what we call road shows. We'd go out into the retirement communities and provide a lot of entertainment and meet an awful lot of people and discover some of the most interesting stories you have ever heard come from some of these retirement centers, independent living centers, community centers, people where are places where people live and just common, ordinary people tell some very interesting stories. I have always had a real interest myself in Israel. And as those who have listened to our show in the past realize, I've got this big map of Israel, 15 feet wide, 30 feet long. We'd lay that map out in the middle of the floor, blow it up with air, and I would walk through the land telling people all about the beautiful land of Israel, a very small land, a very diverse land. My feeling always was, if I can't take people to Israel, I'll bring Israel to the people. But it was a lot of fun going out into the various retirement centers, into the churches, community centers, laying that big old map out in the middle of the floor, walking through it, and talking about the land of the Bible. But we also had a lot of various entertainers, people who did some interesting things like, one of our entertainers was a gentleman, he called himself Clyde the Slide. He was a master trombone player. He would go out among the seniors and set up a little sound system and begin to play some of the great old music from the 20s and the 30s, and then he would be the featured soloist on that trombone. One of the most exciting things is to watch a couple of little old 80-year-old ladies stand up and start cutting a rug. I mean, dancing a tune to some of those real old great songs. And you just can't help but enjoy watching them have the fun and remembering and listening to that great music. Clyde was a tremendous one. We had a clown, a guy by the name of Ronnie Vavac. Ronnie was Scooter the Clown. And when he would walk in dressed up as Scooter the Clown and start telling jokes and having fun with people, and you watch them laugh and you start talking to them and asking them questions, it was a lot of fun getting a chance to get acquainted with them and watch their response. Also, I think Marlene Klepper was one of our clowns for a time. They did a great job for us, and it was a lot of fun having her. I think one of the more interesting ones we had, though, we had an Elvis impersonator. Actually, the guy's name was David Hampton. David made a great Elvis. He looked a lot like him. He had the uniform, both a white and a black uniform or costume or whatever terminology you ought to use. But he would impersonate Elvis. He sounded just like him. And when he started singing those great old Elvis tunes, everybody started having a lot of fun singing along with him. They'd applaud him, and I told him to limit the show to about 30, 45 minutes, and when he would get through, people were begging, come on, do one more, and he did a tremendous job for us. One of the things we did, of course, was playing a lot of bingo, and that's always fun when you give away prizes and play bingo and talk to seniors. But I think the most exciting part of these road shows was that the people we met who had such incredible stories to tell. People who remembers when their families homesteaded in Oklahoma. People who had gone through very difficult health situations. People who had had loved ones that had gone through difficult times, or people who had been a part of great things and they had experienced wonderful experiences along life. And when you start talking to them, when they start telling their story, you think, wow, this is fantastic. I wish there was some way we could share this story with everybody. And for the last 6 years, that's what I really want to do. We started this radio show, Senior World Radio. Actually, I did my first show 6 years ago right here on this station. And talking about the seniors, the wonderful world of seniors, how great they were. And over these 6 years, it's been a lot of fun. But to tell the stories of common, ordinary people, I thought was something I would really like to do. So that's what we've decided to do. We are going to tell the stories of individuals. And frankly, we're going to ask you, our listening audience, to help us with this. We want you to give us a phone call and tell us about people you know who have unique experiences, who have done things that are really of interest to you, and you think, man, everybody ought to hear this story. I want you to just give me a phone call. I'm Glenn Howard. Of course, our show is called Senior World Radio, and you can call me at a toll-free number. It's 877-875-0990. I want you to get a pencil and paper and write this number down, because I want you to give me a call and tell me about somebody you know, somebody that you're acquainted with who has a great story that ought to be told on the radio. And let us go out, interview them, record their story, and share it with our listening audience. That number, once again, is 877-875-0990. It's a toll-free number you can call from any place, and we'll get that call, and we would just love very much to hear from you and get a chance to get their stories and put it on the air. But today I want to tell you about some of the people we've interviewed in the past, because over these 5 years, we've had some outstanding guests, and I have just been so impressed with what's going on in our world today. I remember some time ago, we had a gentleman by the name of Chris Cotner came in here. He had helped start an organization. He called it Water 4, the word water and the number 4. Their website was water4.org. And they were traveling to particularly third world countries, most of them in Africa, and simply digging wells and providing clean water. Somebody who had gotten an idea. They made a trip one time to Africa. When they got over there, they discovered that much of the sickness and disease and the problems that people were facing was simply because they didn't have water to drink. They were drinking out of streams, creeks, ponds, any place they could get some water to survive. And some of it was so nasty that, well, it's amazing that they could survive as well as they did. But he got an idea. Why don't we figure out a way to provide clean water? And he set up a system, got some people to help him out. They started going over providing clean water. And I think the last time I talked to him, they were doing that in over 10 countries, 10 third world countries. An incredible ministry. I was so impressed with him. I remember we had Major Dan Proctor in here with the Salvation Army. Salvation Army does such a great job serving the poorest among us. And in fact, we would go out to the Salvation Army facility a lot of times. I've taken that big map of Israel out there several times. And, you know, the people who feel like nobody really pays attention to them, cares about them, to have us come out and to do that big map, or to send out one of our entertainers to talk with them, to sing for them, to entertain them, they were so appreciative. And the Salvation Army has done such a great job, not only providing food and clothing and housing, but just simply telling people you're important. We care about you, and it's been a lot of fun to be a part of that. One of the young men that we interviewed on here a couple of times that really impressed me was a young man by the name of Matt Muse. I'd known Matt for quite a few years, In fact, Matt decided years ago he wanted to be a missionary, and he, as a businessman, was able to move to the Middle East, had served in one of the Islamic countries of the Middle East for several years, but had a chance to just simply do ministry on a one-on-one basis, and developed quite a ministry over there. After a few years of that, he had the door open for him to go to China. And went over as a student, living in an apartment house, going to school, getting acquainted with students. And over the years, Matt developed a tremendous ministry to Chinese students in China, led many of them to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, but was also able to help teach and train many of the young Christian workers in China. And then a few years ago, for the sake of his family, he decided it was rather important for him to come back to the States for a time. But he had such a love for the international students, he got an idea that he wanted to go into our universities, get acquainted with the international students, and then connect an international student with an American family. He told me, he said, one of the most amazing things is that a great majority of international students who come to the United States go to school, stay here 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, but are never inside the home of an American family the entire time they're here. And he said, if we can just get people to open their doors, to invite them into their home, to have coffee with them, to get acquainted with them, it's amazing how it breaks down the barriers between the countries and develops a warm relation. And so he set up quite a ministry, working with international students and connecting them with people here in various churches in a private ministry. In fact, Matt's got a way of letting you become a missionary without ever leaving your hometown. And any of these, I'm going to be telling you about some more in just a little bit, but if you want to get a chance to meet any of these guys, get involved with them, to learn more about their ministries, I hope you will give me a call. My phone number is 877-875-0990. We'd love to tell you about how to get in touch with these people and get involved in some of their ministries. Anyway, we've got to take a break for a moment. I'm Glenn Howard, Senior World Radio. We're going to be coming right back in just a few minutes, telling you some more about some of the people that we have been interviewing, some of the things we're going to be doing as far as the future is concerned. We're just so delighted to have you a part of this program and hope you'll make it a habit to listen every week. Senior World Radio. We're going to be right back. Please don't go away.
You're nobody till somebody loves you. You're nobody till somebody cares.
Have you ever had a problem, but it seemed like there was no one who could help? You spent hours calling around, being referred from one place to the next. Well, not anymore. I want to tell you about a free and easy-to-use service in Oklahoma. 211 is a simple 3-digit phone number to get help or to give help when you don't know where to turn. Dialing 211 only takes a minute, and you are connected with a caring Oklahoman who will help you find the assistance you've been looking for. With access to over 13,000 programs, Heartline 211 can connect you to local resources for many different needs, including health care, food, counseling, rent assistance, disability assistance, job services, and much more. 211 is a service of Heartline, a United Way partner agency. 211, the right first call to get help or give help 24 hours a day.
Hi, my name's Jason Ledlow, president of UT Phone, the ultimate telephone service. We're proud to be a sponsor of Senior World Radio with Glenn Howard. UT Phone is dedicated to providing Oklahomans affordable telephone service all across our great state. We have Lifeline home phone service starting at just $1.95. That's right, just $1.95, and most of Oklahoma's seniors qualify for this reduced home phone service. They get to keep their old home phone number, and it even includes long distance. Another great feature of UT Phone's customers really like is that it includes repair service. That's right, any repairs at no additional charge. With many telephone services charging $40 to $50 per month, it makes sense to switch your service to UT Phone. This service is a federal program that is provided through the Universal Service Fund. There is only one per household, so make it UT Phone's home phone service for $1.95. Give us a call at 800-996-0098. Again, call 800-996-0098.
I've made up my mind.
And welcome back to Senior World Radio. I'm Glenn Howard. So good to have you join me on this, our beginning show of a brand new series for Senior World Radio, a chance to try to tell the stories of people that have interesting stories, but sometimes don't have the publicity, don't have the attention. Maybe their story hasn't been heard and it needs to be heard. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be asking you, our listening audience, to help us find these people. Give us a phone call. Tell us about somebody you know who has an interesting story. I find everybody's got a story to tell. Some are more interesting than others. We want to find those who have the most interesting stories, get them on the air, talk about their stories, and we'll come out to the people. We'll bring a recording equipment right out to their home or a retirement center or wherever they live and get a chance to get their stories and talk about what they've done, what they're doing, and give everybody a chance to enjoy and to share that information. But again, write down this phone number, 877-875-0990. Now, just before we went on break, I was telling you a little bit about some of the people we've interviewed in the past. And they've been exciting people. One especially has been, or the people especially I've enjoyed, has been people in government. I remember some time ago we had James Woolsey, who was the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency. He was talking about the threat to the United States that's coming from particularly international Islamists, and also especially how that our petrodollars are being used against us and the dangers that we face. That was a very interesting show. I also had an interesting chance to talk to a lot of the Oklahoma politicians and community leaders. I think we've had about every director of every department, several of the congressmen, senators, both state and federal, and just a lot of fun talking about politics and government. Of course, a lot of shows do that. We were not unique in it, but it was a lot of fun being a part of it, and particularly focusing towards seniors. But one of the most interesting people that I interviewed was a guy by the name of Bill Federer. Bill Federer is a historian. He wrote a book that I was very impressed with. It was entitled From Change, C-H-A-N-G-E, to Chains, C-H-A-I-N-S. He described it as a 6,000-year quest for control. And he pointed out that every government has a tendency to lead the people away from freedom and independence into bondage. I was very impressed with, he said, the best government that was ever created was the government back when God set up a government for the children of Israel coming out of Egypt and said, I am your king. I don't want you to have a king. They did set up judges to divide or to settle disputes between people. But there's an interesting statement in that book of Judges which says, every man did that's right in his own eyes. Now, so many times we think if people do that that's right in their own eyes, it's got to be bad. So we try to bring people under control and to almost intimidate. In fact, many of our church groups called accountability groups. We want to bring people under accountability one to another. He suggested that the best government is really where the people are free to do whatever they feel is best, feel is right, the complete freedom, and only have judges to intervene in the event there's a dispute between two people. And that was probably the best government, the freest government. But people said, no, we want a king. And from that point, they started moving into bondage where you had a king that controlled, governed. And he suggests we're doing the same thing right now. In fact, Bill Federer does publish a historical minute daily on the web. And if you'll give me a phone call, I'll give you that information, and you can subscribe to his historical minute on the web. It's absolutely free. But I think you would enjoy very much getting a chance to learn more about Bill Federer. One of the interesting people that we had on the show some time ago was a rabbi by the name of Jonathan Cahn. Jonathan Cahn, you may remember, wrote a book entitled The Harbinger. That book was a very disturbing book. I think disturbing, first of all, because how accurate it was. Secondly, because of the picture that it paints of the United States and of the future. And, well, that is one book I think everybody ought to read. I noticed it's been offered even at discount now at Walmart's and Sam's and every bookstore, and a lot of copies of it around. But The Harbinger takes the 9/11 event and relates it to the way God dealt with Israel in the Old Testament, giving them a warning. But the children of Israel said, nah, we're not going to pay any attention to that. We're going to resist. We're going to build ourselves up. We're going to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we're going to go in spite of everything that happens. And Jonathan points out that that kind of defiance was the thing that literally destroyed the children of Israel and led them into bondage. And when he ties them into what's going on in the United States and points out 7 harbingers that, you can read for yourself and determine, yeah, it's exactly the way that he describes it. You begin to raise some questions and say, God, are we being that rebellious people? And I'm afraid the answer's got to be, yeah, I think we are. So I really enjoyed Jonathan Cahn's show when he was with us and enjoyed reading his book. I think you would find it very interesting. I remember some time ago we had a gentleman on here by the name of Kevin McAfee. Kevin was the producer of a movie, came out, I think about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I don't remember exact dates, but it was entitled The Last Ounce of Courage. I'm sure some of you probably saw that movie in the local theaters. It was about a small-town mayor who found the courage to stand up against the forces of government. And that carried a message that resonated with people and called people to stand up. And instead of declaring, I am as mad as hell and ain't going to take it no more, to be able to stand up and say, I'm going to stand for what's right in the face of opposition coming from the government or anybody else. The Last Ounce of Courage. That was a great movie, probably still available on DVD. Get a copy of it and watch that. Kevin McAfee did a great job with us. I remember one time we had a guest in here, a medical doctor, a research scientist who was doing some work particularly on atrial fibrillation, something that concerns me because my wife has a problem with that. But he was discussing how that they were magnetizing medications and drawing the medication to the diseased part of the body, in this case to the heart, to solve the problems without actually invading the body. He was suggesting that this was the kind of thing that in the future they'd be able to magnetically draw medicine into cancers, various tumors, all kind of problems, to provide cure without actually having to open the body or to enter the body at all. Non-invasive method of treating. That was kind of exciting, talking to our seniors about that. I remember sometime later we had a couple of gentlemen on here that I enjoyed. It was a Jew and an Arab Christian, both of them from Jerusalem, both of them working together in a ministry explaining how Arabs and Jews can work together for peace. And that was a very interesting show to see how, yes, we can accept one another, work together, and accomplish something that is really important. But I think a couple of my guests that I've had on probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 times for one of them and several times for the other. One of them is a gentleman by the name of Trevor Loudon. Trevor Loudon was from New Zealand. We brought him over here. He was speaking down at the High Noon Club down at H&H Gun Range. It meets every Friday at noon. But Trevor Loudon wrote a book entitled Barack Obama and the Enemies Within. he began looking at some of the people in our government, their backgrounds, their relationships, and began to point out that it not only is the person who is in charge, but it's the people that they build around them that really create the results of the administration. And he pointed out some of the people whose backgrounds and history is rather frightening to look at, to realize where they're from. That's one book. It was, I presume, probably still available. It's only been out a couple of years or so. But the name of the book was Barack Obama and the Enemies Within. If you get a chance to get that book, get it and read that one. But the last guy that I want to mention is a gentleman I've had on so many times, a gentleman by the name of Avi Lipkin. Avi Lipkin was born and raised in New York. At the age of 18, he moved to Israel. He got a degree in Sovietology and was working with the Prime Minister's office over there as a spokesperson. Sometime later became a spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Force. But more interestingly, his wife, Rachel, is the lady who listens to all of the Arabic broadcasts in the Middle East and translates them into Hebrew for the Israeli government. And the kind of stuff she hears coming out of Israel is really quite frightening, some of the things they're saying. For example, he was the guy who announced before 9/11 that they were going to be flying airplanes into buildings, and people said he was crazy. And when it happened, they said, "You're a prophet." And he said, "No, I'm not a prophet. I just listened to my wife, and she was listening to them, and they said they were going to do it." And so he's been on our show several times talking about the threat against America. It's been so very, very interesting. But all of these people have been so much fun for me over these last 5-6 years to talk to get acquainted with. But when we decided to start this show again, I wanted to make that switch from talking with these kind of people who have interesting stories, have done great jobs, have a message to give, to talking to the common, ordinary person who has had experiences that needs to be shared. So I'm asking you to join me. If you will, give me a phone call. My number again is 877-875-0990. My name is Glenn Howard. This show is called Senior World Radio. I want you to call me and say, "Hey, you ought to meet," and give me the name and address of somebody. Let me go out, talk to them, interview them, record their story. Let's put it on the air and let's enjoy the wonderful stories that come from our own incredible Oklahomans living right here among us. Anyway, time's up. I got to go. Hey, it's been so great being with you. I've enjoyed it very much. We'll be back with you again this same time next week. Until then, be kind to one another. Love somebody, especially yourself. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.